All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everyone today to Solon's Insight webinar. My name's Adam Kurtz, and I'll be guiding you through today's topic, which we'll be talking about calculations and how to basically create them and edit them in the Stratum interface. So we'll be looking at some examples of, start pretty basic, and we'll just kind of introduce you to different ways to calculate certain types of basic calcs for business, variances, variance percentages, and then we'll also go look into some of the stratum functions that are available to make some of those calculations easier, and that way you don't have to write so much syntax in order to perform some of these basic calculations as well. So let's get right into it. We're going to go into our interface. And so here we have the Stratum interface, and we'll just run a view here to look at some of the basic calculations. And so here I have a view with some different variances of sales year to date over year. We've also got in the middle here current month sales, and then over here we've got a rolling 3-month scenario, and you can already see a percentage, a variance percent there that's already been calculated. So if we want to add another calculation or play with the existing calculation, for existing calculations, you can simply just double click on the column header and it will bring up the calculation. This is the calculation expression menu, which will allow you to make changes to the calculation as needed. So you can go in here and, as you can see, it's already using a function called percent of change. And so it's basically taking these two measures and calculating the percent of change function, actual sales and then actual sales from the prior year, so current year and prior year. Up here, we can see in the expression window that we can also give it a format. So if I click on that, it allows you to gain access to the different formats of your result, your calculation result. So in this case, we want to show that as a percent, and then we also have a single digit there after the decimal spot, so 1 decimal space. Over here is the actual caption of the expression window. So if you wanted to massage that here, I can come in and type whatever I want, essentially. So I can also hit the button there, and I can type it here as well. So if I want to call it variance percent or whatever it is I want to call that, you can do that. Also, you can put in the time frames here as well. So if you wanted to show that it's calculating based off of one of the time, the measures that you're using within the calculation, you can incorporate that into the header. So here you can say, well, this is for the time range of, and you can put in the entire time range if you wanted to go in and do the from and the to year. And you can hinge that based on whatever measures you're using for the calculation itself. And that's nice because that way it'll show up. Cancel out of that. So for instance, this is a rolling scenario here, and we've got the percent change for this rolling, I believe it's a 3-month. Yeah. So you got current month and 2 months ago. So how can we make this more meaningful for the header? So if I go in, the header again doesn't have the time range in there for those columns. So let's go ahead and make that happen. And that way it'll be in sync with the columns that we're using for that calculation. So here we can hinge it on the most recent time range. And so I'll select the sales for 2024 because we're comparing it to 2023. So I really want this to represent 2024 sales percent change. How can I do that? Well, I could just put the full year in there if I want. Um, and then so I'll click on that, and then I'll evaluate it, and there you have it. So I'm going to click OK, and then that way I can also put in some other language here, rolling 3 month, or if I wanted to, I could just put in the actual time range itself. So if I want to come in here and just grab the entire time range and structure it in such a manner, and then I'll go to the end here. So that's my from range, and I'll put in a 2, and then it'll be to the short description, and then go to the very end and add in your year for the 2 year. So we'll evaluate that. So now it matches the 2024 rolling sales time range. So I click OK to that. So now I have that, and it marries up nicely to one of the most current year of the sales amount that I'm using in that percent change. So as this changes, for instance, if a user comes in and maybe changes that, um, maybe make this last year, so that gets updated to 2023, and then this will go back to 2 years ago. So maybe they want to see, what that comparison would look like. So they make those changes and then they exit. And so now it's doing a comparison on that July through September 23 versus July through September 2022. And oh, look at that, it's 30% across the board. That'll never happen in reality. But also notice that this is just demo data that we create. Notice also that it did match up and changed the time range because that's what we're hinged on. So if you're not using, getting more advanced with the header, you can, and you can show more meaningful information on the header of the calculation by using that little tip there for just getting a more, a better header for your calculations, something that marries up again with your the data over here that you're using for the calculation. Okay. While we're at it, we can add in a new calculation. So how would we do that? Well, there's a couple ways to do that. Probably the easiest and fastest way I normally do it is just right clicking on the column where I want that calculation to go to the right of. So if I want a variance between these two columns here, then I'll just click on I'll do a right click on that right column, and I'll do an add calculated measure item. And look at that, it just brings up the same thing that we just got done working with. So it's the same window, same menu that we get to go ahead and write this calculation for the variance between those two data columns. So how would we do that? Well, those are measure items. And then as you can see, we can kind of see all the different measure items, basically the structure of the data grid. Variance between these two rolling scenarios. Then I can go ahead and just do a simple variance by clicking on the first most current year and then doing a minus and then clicking on the prior year. Really, really simple, right? So I'm just taking this year minus last year. And it's going to be in money format. So I want to go ahead and grab a money display mask. And then over here, I can do the same thing. I can do variance, dollar, and then I can add in my header time range if I wanted to. I'm just going to skip it for now because we already covered that. So I click OK, and I get my variance column. Really simple, right? And then I can right click on that and I can sort on it now that I have it. So now I can see the product brands that have the bigger variance dollars. So, that's a really quick and easy way to do the variance. And then if I wanted to build a percent change off of that, we already have that. So, that's what we're using over here in this column. But I could certainly use this variance to, build a variance percent as well, now that I have the variance calculated. I can hide it. So if you need calculations to build other calculations off of, Yes, you can simply hide some of the calculations you don't want to show. So for instance, let's just hide this variance percent calc and let's just, um, we'll act like it doesn't exist. So now we have the variance dollars between these two columns. Now I'm just going to go ahead and add in a new calculated measure item. And I'm going to use one of my functions to calculate that percent of change. So here we've got, so I go to the bottom folder here to expose the different functions that I can use from Stratum Viewer functions. And here we have a percent of change. So I click on that and it shows the syntax as you see it here in the expression. And then I go up to my measure items and I simply choose the numerator and my denominator for, this calculation, this percent of change. And what it's going to do, percent of change is basically this year minus last all over last. And that's essentially what this is going to do. It doesn't look like it, but it will. So let's format it and we'll do a percent and we'll call this percent of change. Let's call it variance percent because we'll keep it simple or separate from the other calculation that we hid, right? So let's go ahead and click OK on that. And so that's reassuring, right? So we know it's 30%. We already knew that from the other calculated column, right? Now, so I use that format, right, or this function percent of change. I can wipe that out, and I can certainly just use that variance all over last year. Let's see if we get that same 30% across the board. And indeed, we do. So it's doing the same math. As you can see, it's taking the variance and then taking that all over last year's sales. So that's reassuring that the function and the actual raw math concur. Okay. And if I just want to, again, hide that variance, then I can go ahead and hide that and still show that 30% calculation. Okay. What are some of the other things that we can pursue on that? Well, if we go in and we add a calculation here, we can do an achievement percent as well. What's the difference between that and variance percent? Well, the achievement percent won't do the variance. It'll just take this year over last year, if that's what you want to do. So for instance, if I take that most current year all over the prior year, and then we format that again with using a percent, this is achievement percent. Let's see what that looks like. So it's a little different, right? So it's actually showing me that it's 100% greater than last year plus 30, right? So it met last year's level plus another 30. So it's just kind of a different spin, right, on the difference between these two columns. This actually does better with like versus a quota or a sales plan, where reps like to see their quota if they're over 100. They get to go to President's Club or whatever it is that they're looking for, those thresholds, right? I mean, look back. Let's. I'm going to go ahead and turn this back over to 24 and 23 because I think the data will be a little bit more realistic. So let's change this to current, and this will go back to last year. Let's see what we got. Yeah, so now we're getting some different numbers here because it looks a little bit more realistic. But as you can see, it's just duplicating that delta there within that 100% number there. So, and that's the difference between achievement and variance percent, if you didn't know. I mean, I don't think I knew that a while back either. So let's go in. What else can we pursue here? There's different things that I like here that we can do. Another cool thing is a count. If I wanted to perhaps do a count and count my different things that I have here within the my view. So maybe customer, so I could see how many customers purchase these product brands. So how can we do that? Well, if I go in and I choose my customer level, it's looking for that sales customer sold to, and then what measure do I want to hinge that on? Well, I'll do year-to-date sales. So let's pick January through September 2024. That's my year-to-date in this particular environment. This will be a number, so we'll just do like an integer. without a decimal. And this is customer count, bill to. Just call it customer count. Right, let's see, go ahead and click OK to that. And boom, it's slightly different. We've got 26 customers across the board, except for First Choice. It's got 24 customers purchasing out of there. If we go to product, we'll drill from one of these. Farm Fresh is one of our top products, or product brands, I should say. I could sort that. Let's sort it on year to date over here. So I'm going to sort this column over here to the right. That's my year to date column for the current year. And sure enough, Farm Fresh is my top product brand for sales. I drill that to product, and now I can see, and I'll move my customer accounts over here because that's basically what it's using is actual sales year to date. How cool is that? So now I've got 16 customers buying my fruit cocktails. I've got 18 over here. As a matter of fact, let's sort this in descending fashion. So now I've got my top customer accounts by product and my top brand. Who are these guys? So now I'm going to move sold to over here so I can just drill from my Apple product to my different sold tos. And it says I have 18 sold tos, and that's right because I've got 19 rows, but that includes the grand total row. So that's spot on, right? So it's wonderful. I love using that particular feature because it's, at other levels it's very interesting, right? So, and I could just do this by product. If I just get rid of brand and I just drag and drop product over here I can see that I'm sorting this, and these are my top products in terms of customer count. And then here near the bottom where I could just click on that sort. I need to do a little work on some of these items that I only have a few accounts purchasing from me. So it's a great, wonderful way to identify areas of gaps, opportunity, whatever you want to call it, and then you can go ahead and devise a plan to attack it. So I really like that one. Just sorting my data back to the sales. Okay, and then going back to the product brand here, that's the new Chrome feature that I hate. There we go. Okay, back to product brand. Let's explore some other things that we can do here. Well, here's one. I wanted to show this view anyway. Using functions for cumulative percent and ABC cumulative percent of total. Here, and this might be more interesting at the product level. And now we can kind of do some ABC classification here based on product sales. So let me explain what's going on in this particular view. We've got sales this year versus last year to date for sales dollars. And then right here, I've got a calculation and another one. What are these doing? This one's actually calculating a cumulative percent of total so that I can see the thresholds of business by volume. And if I double click on that, we can see the syntax of the calculation. So here we have the calculation cumulative percent of total. And that's what we're using right there, the cumulative percent of total function for just one measure, and it's year-to-date sales. So if I were to rewrite this from scratch, I would simply just select cumulative percent of total, and then my year-to-date column for sales. Boom, same thing. I just created it. There's my format. There's my title. I validate it. It looks good. I click OK, and there it is. So I get that. I don't need it, but it's nice to eyeball that number to kind of see what's going on in my little ABC function. So what is this all about? I double click on that, and it's using yet another different function here called ABC cumulative percent. And I'm basing that on the same measure, right? Year-to-date sales. And then I'm using a threshold for my ABC segmentation. So anything under the 60% cumulative percent threshold will be an A. Anything under 80% will be a B. And then all the rest of the items will be C. And with that sorted in the right way, my sales being sorted, my cumulative percent being calculated a certain way, we can see that all the A items are under 60%, which is exactly how I wanted that function to behave. I can change this if I wanted to maybe tweak that to 5, maybe lower this threshold to 7. I click OK, and then I should see ABC now ending at 5 or 50, and then my C items kicking in down there at the 70% line. Indeed, they do. So this is a great way to ABC classify your items based on, in this case, sales amount. But you can base it on whatever measure that you have within the view, whether it's sales or inventory or whatever, open orders, that type of stuff. You can get a clue as to, but normally it's, ABC classification for items. So you can kind of really get a feel for what items you want to prioritize for production. And, it's a classic, manufacturing metric KPI. So that's, I love, dealing, using these functions makes it much easier to accomplish some of this stuff here. So, if I were to let's add in our units. So we'll bring in units so we can get to some sort of average sale price. Let's do that. So I'm going to bring this in. I'm going to just make it year to date so it jives with the rest of my columns here. So there's my actual sales units for my dollars, and same year to date for my units. And I'm going to right click, add yet another calculation here. And I would just want ASP. So I just want an average sell price so I can get a feel for pricing, how things are going in terms of pricing. So I basically just want to take dollar over units here. Certainly I could do the math, just do sales amount all over sales units, which, oops, I clicked on the wrong one there. Let's try that again. So I would just take sales over / units. There we go. So now that's the simple math of dollar over units. We're using the / as our divisor sign. We're going to give it a percent sign with a single decimal spot. I'm sorry, this will be a dollar. What am I thinking? Because it will be average sell price. So we'll give it a dollar amount, and we'll call it ASP. So we'll go ahead and validate this. It looks good. We click OK, and voila. So now we've got our ASP for current year. Of course, I could put that in my header so that I would have the same time range here, which would be a good idea to do. So now I've got my ASP. I can drag and drop that wherever I want. It seems to be good here. I could sort this to see if I wanted to my top priced items, and I could eyeball how the pricing looks for that. If you ever have a divide by zero, you will get a divide by zero error here. I don't think I can create one here because I don't think I have a scenario like that. But if I come in here and I double click on that particular calculation, instead of doing the math, I can back that out and I can use a Stratum viewer function, divide with zero check. What that'll do is it'll basically, if you do have a scenario where you have a divide by zero error, which is undefined, by the way, it's not really a number, and it might mess up your totals and other things. This will alleviate that by just putting in a zero for you. So I strongly suggest that you use divide with zero check every time you're doing division. And in this case, we're doing dollars over units. It's real simple. You just click on your numerator and your denominator. And we click OK, and we should see the same result. Except now I can have the freedom of mind to know that, these will total properly. So if I go on and show all my rows here, and I go to the bottom here, I get a good number. For instance, maybe I wanted to do a summation of this. It's just doing it. The grand total band is based on the total. Maybe I wanted to sum the amounts. I don't know why you'd want to do that here, but there would be some other scenarios where you might want to do that. Um, and it's going to now show me the actual sum of that column instead of doing the math here at the grand total level. You might have some use for that. But now it's giving me the sum of that column, and it's able to add it up because they're all numbers. If I had an undefined issue here, guess what? My sum would be undefined as well. So those are bad. You want to stay away from the undefined signs and stick with integers and real numbers. And these using these formulas or these functions, Stratum viewer functions, will help you stay away from those scenarios. So, make sure you definitely check those out. There's a lot of other ones here that we didn't get into, but percent of total is another really easy one. Um, and some other percent of subtotal if you want to do that. If you have a view that's subtotaled out by multiple levels, you can use that so you can see the actual percentage of the subtotals as well. Pretty simple stuff to as you can see, these things are really easy to work with. So if you want, you can always call me for additional assistance. I'd be glad to help you. We're also available for full-blown training. So if you want to train your entire sales force, you can contact me and we can help you with some of that as well.